Welcome to my 5-minute lecture. This session will provide an overview of Chapter 5. As a reminder, this is the structure of an argument. These are standard components to include in your writing or to look for in your analysis of an argument. In a good argument, the author's position will be clear and apparent throughout. It will appear in the opening statements, the overall line of reasoning, the summary, and conclusion. It's important to remind and reinforce throughout to aid in persuasion. Paul and Elder's intellectual standards come into play. Clarity helps create the picture in the audience's mind. Precision demands facts, data, and information that create specificity. Logic seeks sequences and consistency, connecting claims with evidence, and in turn with conclusions. Relevance minimizes distractions with focused detail and apparent relationship to the topic, answering, is it useful or extraneous? If you're unclear about your own position, you may be uninformed or confused. You may not have a strong sense of conviction to the idea, which will make it more difficult for you to effectively criticize an outside perspective or defend your own stance. Math uses a method called proof by contradiction to analyze logic. They map the argument but work backwards, looking for inconsistency. It ferrets out if the line of reasoning contributes to the conclusion and contradictions that undermine the main message. The approach is to assume the premise is false and then look for evidence that supports the false premise, thereby highlighting the argument's weakness and inconsistency. Pause and read this example. The conclusion is that computers will one day be able to outperform humans at everything. However, the author has argued that computers lack the qualities needed for empathy. This contradicts the idea of computers being better at everything. A strong line of reasoning considers alternative points of view, including those that contradict the main argument. Clearly communicate the position you want the audience to take by including it throughout your line of reasoning, showing how the position holds true, regardless. You predict and manage any apparent contradictions, demonstrating why that alternative is less convincing than your position. The apple and teeth examples from the chapter demonstrate how word selection and the depth within the line of reasoning to support a position can make all the difference, not only in effective persuasion, but to help clarify and accurately understand the message. Some arguments work with only one reason on its own. No other reason is needed for this to be logical. The reason leads to the conclusion. Some arguments use more than one reason, and these can be joint or independent. In this example, we have independent reasons. One good reason might be sufficient even if others are discounted. The author may use several reasons to support the conclusion, each of which may be valid in its own right, but have nothing to do with the other reasons given. Either one of these two reasons could stand alone and reach that same conclusion. There's logical consistency in this because each one of the reasons, though not related, independently work to support the conclusion. You do not need both to make sense or make the argument. In this example, we have joint reasons. The reasons are connected in some way and mutually reinforce each other. When reasons are joint, each reason must be acceptable in its own right or the argument collapses. The second reason does not work on its own to support the conclusion. It is useful to identify whether each separate reason is sufficient in its own right to support the argument. Having multiple reasons does not make the argument stronger. In fact, lots of weak reasons do not add up to a good argument. This is where argument mapping can be helpful in understanding an argument and creating a meaningful counter-argument for debate. Intermediate conclusions are based on reasons. When communicated effectively, they help the audience identify different stages within the argument. They help to structure an argument almost as though they were step-by-step instructions to follow the argument between one stage and the next. As you encounter longer and more elaborated lines of reasoning, you may find several sets of reasons to support the overall conclusion. Well-constructed arguments group similar reasons into sets. Each of those sets support an intermediate conclusion, and all intermediate conclusions support the main line of reasoning. The line of reasoning or the overall argument should lead forwards with a clear direction rather than hopping from one point to another in a random way or leading the audience round in circles. You can see how logical order in an argument creates a clear and precise explanation that includes breadth and depth through reasoning and evidence. A frustrating error often found is that of circular reasoning. This fallacy, which we will talk about more in future lectures, is just as it sounds. There is no substance to the argument and no logical sequence. It is confusing and provides little to support the premise. Recognizing a well-constructed argument helps you develop skills as an argument builder. Make sure to review this week's lecture for resources that dive deeper into these topics. Thanks for watching.